Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. Before we get started, we're going to have Councilman Adam lead us in prayer, and I ask everyone please stand for the pledge. All right, once again, thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our agenda. First item on the agenda is to consider approval of minutes of April 5th, 2022 regular session and April 12th, 2022 special session.
After reviewing the minutes, I'll make a motion that we approve the April 5th and the regular session, or the special session on April 12th as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Dale, second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, record a vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, we'll go ahead and close that after the unanimous vote. We'll go ahead and to item 2, which is to consider approval of appointments to the Housing Authority of the City of Mount Pleasant.
So this is from Steve Martin. They did this a few years ago. The same people just reapplied, and this is something that we do on a regular basis.
Okay, correct. Council, we have any questions on this item?
Could you?
Let me just say that again, once again, we appreciate these individuals that step up and serve our community in these committees, and as a commissioner for this housing authority. They've all done a good job, and again, we appreciate them stepping up and serving.
Ms. Webster, could you name the people, please?
Royce Martin, Kevin Rose, and Bobby Rice.
Okay. With that being said, if we had something.
Their term will expire on 6/30 of 24 if they're approved tonight by the council.
Okay, thank you, sir. The floor will be open for a motion on this item.
I'll move the approval of the appointment of Roy Martin, Kevin Rose, and Bobby Rice to the Mount Pleasant Housing Authority Board.
I second the motion.
Have a motion by Councilman Adams, second by Councilman Walker. Madam Secretary, record a vote on this item.
Aye.
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 We have a unanimous decision. We'll go ahead and close item 2. Item 3 on the agenda will be an update and discussion concerning the comprehensive plan, the MP 2040 project. Robert.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight we're going to bring you up to speed on what we've been doing for the last several months. And it's just, we're sort of reaching the end of the comp planning process. And we've completed work with the committee, the advisory committee, and they've made the recommendation. And consultants here, we're going to go through a presentation and show you where we're at, what we've got, what gotten done at this point, and just give you the hopefully give you the plan in a nutshell. And then we'll bring sometime, hopefully in the next month or so, we're going to be bringing back the plan to you for possible adoption. I think we're there. You'll have plenty of time to look through it and review it and comment. And tonight he's going to go through that with you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Craig and members of the Mount Pleasant City Council. Again, my name is Mark Bowers. I'm a planner, urban designer with the firm Kimley Horn and Associates out of Dallas, and really appreciate this opportunity to be here this evening We have a overview presentation, as Robert called it, a plan in a nutshell. So we want to give you the highlights of the things that we've been hearing and some of the main components that are part of the plan at this point. So if we can go to the next slide. The agenda we have for tonight, we'll give you a quick recap of the feedback to date. It's really building upon information I shared with you at the last meeting where I briefed you. We won't go into a whole lot of detail on that, but just to remind you of some of the things we've been hearing. And then we want to get into the basic components of the comprehensive plan. So the strategic direction that typically comes out of a comprehensive plan is associated with the vision statement, guiding principles, which we wanted to share with you this evening, and then a draft future land use plan. I want to reiterate that everything we have this evening is in draft form. It is currently online. We have a community forum number 3 going on. Still opens for some online feedback at this point. So there's still opportunities for those that may be seeing this remotely to be able to go out there and weigh in. And then we want to talk a little bit about the place types. We'll give you a real quick overview of some of the key things coming out of the draft thoroughfare plan and the draft parks, recreation, trails, and open space plan, and then we'll talk to you about next steps. So on the next slide, if you'll recall, this is information I shared with you at our last briefing. We started off the process with a SWOT analysis where we looked at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We did a community-wide survey and received over 500 responses to that survey. So it was a really good response rate based upon the population size of Mount Pleasant. And some of the key things that we talked about at the last meeting, one of the overriding things we saw was strength of that sense of community, small town feel. And that was something people really wanted to see continue, even as Mount Pleasant continues to grow and have new people moving in. They want to still make sure that that basic trait of the community is still there. So I won't go through all of these because I think we vetted them quite a bit in the last meeting. But if we can go on to the next slide. So just to reiterate, we've had a couple of or several opportunities for community input. We started off with that community-wide survey, and then we had community forum number 1, which was held at the event center. We had a face-to-face forum for people to come out and share wide open ideas about what they want to see in the future of Mount Pleasant. Again, that time frame that we're looking at is 2040 to 2050 time frame. So we want people to take their blinders off of what they're doing today and tell us what they'd like to see happening far into the future. And a lot of this is not just for those of us in the room, but it's for children and grandchildren that will be inheriting Mount Pleasant. So it's a really important process. So we followed that up with an online version for people that weren't able to attend the meeting. Maybe somebody works third shift and couldn't be there on a Saturday morning or something. So we wanted to make multiple opportunities available for people to weigh in. We then followed up after we had some preliminary direction from Community Forum 1 with Community Forum number 2. That took place just after the first of the year this year. Again, we had both an online and a face-to-face version of that meeting. Got really good feedback, gave us a little bit more information to hang on each of these plan components. Now we have those preliminary plan components in place, and as I said, Community Forum number 3 is open at this point online. So next slide, some of the overriding things that we have heard throughout. For the comprehensive plan, some of the major themes were additional shopping and dining destinations were desired, especially in downtown and along I-30. People saw those as really those 2 main centers that they want to see enhanced and see them become even more vibrant, or for businesses to move in that support family type of activities with shopping and dining. They want to see more attainable housing options. Housing was certainly an issue we heard about throughout the comprehensive plan process. In housing that's suitable and a price range for the employees of many of the businesses that you have, as well as municipal workers and school district workers in the community. Wanted to see more development along I-30. There was a lot of discussion throughout the entire process about family-friendly and youth-specific activities in the community. People were remembering things that had been here before, like the a putt-putt golf and different things like that were no longer here. And they said, we really need those types of things for families to get together. And then street maintenance was another common theme that came across. And then under the Parks and Recreation Plan, some of the key themes, there was a lot of discussion about aquatics, about the pool. If you recall, right when we kicked off the process, I think the pool closed down, and so there's a lot of interest about, what's the next step about where that is headed. So there will be some recommendations through the Parks and Open Space Master Plan related to further study to identify what is that best approach. Really, from the Parks and Recreation standpoint, there was a lot of discussion about new playground equipment, maintenance on existing parks, and new trail connections. I'll give you a little bit of a heads up about what we're going to get to in the Parks Plan. What we found is that in evaluating your parks and their locations, you've got some really great parkland. It's well located within the community. And really the main things that we were seeing is maybe a need just to enhance some of those existing facilities that you have. We heard the same thing in talking to the community, so it was good to see those points line up. So next slide, and then if you want to skip on to the next one right after that. So we vetted this a little bit with you in your last meeting. The highest level direction that a comprehensive plan can provide is with the vision statement. We spent quite a bit of time working with staff, with stakeholders, with the advisory committee, crafting the vision statement. We brought it to you, and I think there were a few minor comments associated with that statement, and we took it back and tweaked it even more with the advisory committee. So where it is at this point is Mount Pleasant is committed to being a diverse, family-friendly, Northeast Texas community that provides residents with a high quality of life through innovative business, employment, and educational opportunities, modern infrastructure, public safety and healthcare resources, beautiful lakes, parks, and trails, recreation for all ages, and a thriving historic downtown, while continuing to provide the unique sense of belonging and warmth of a small town atmosphere. So there's a whole lot of things within that vision statement, but as we vetted it with the committee, they felt all of those aspects were important to point out because they really created the essence of Mount Pleasant and what it is to be here and the reason people choose to have this as their home or business. So that is that highest level statement, so that as projects come forward, and the reason we do a vision statement and also the guiding principles is there may be something look at what technology has done over the last 30 years. There may be new technologies and opportunities that come to your community 15, 20 years from now that unfortunately we weren't able to foresee. And so there may not be something specifically designated on your land use plan to say, yeah, that's an appropriate thing for Mount Pleasant. So we think the vision statement and the guiding principles are important as a backup for you to say, well, does that type of development or that business support these guiding principles? And if it does, then it's probably appropriate for you to say yes to that type of development in the future. So that's why we push on this a little bit. So the next slide, I won't go into all of these in detail, but we also worked quite a bit in building upon that vision statement. As you can see, there were a whole lot of elements that the vision statement highlighted, and we tried to touch on some of those within the guiding principles. So you see there's a focus on businesses that provide high quality jobs to Mount Pleasant residents. You see that further Mount Pleasant is an education and training hub for people in Northeast Texas, provides new neighborhoods that provide Mount Pleasant residents with a wide range of attainable housing choices. So each of these get into those specific aspects that Mount Pleasant supports growth that do these things. As we took these back to the advisory committee, we weren't asked to make any changes. They felt like we had covered all of the items they had been discussing, the items from the vision statement. They felt like it was a good drill down into those components. So you can see those on the screen. balance between old and new and between residential and non-residential. That's important for a diverse tax base, so all of your taxes aren't falling on the residents. And if you want to go on to the next slide, offers diverse, vibrant, family-friendly shopping, dining. Again, that came right out of things we heard in the community. Enhances and upgrades Mount Pleasant's existing system of parks and recreation facilities for all ages. And then finally, is focused on strengthening these targeted investment along I-30 in downtown Mount Pleasant. So again, I shared a little bit about the intent of these, but they are intended to, at the highest level, support the vision statement and provide additional guidance for decisions that this city council will be making about development proposals in the future. So with that, we want to get into the land use plan, which is really the physical layout. So if you want to go on to the next slide, it's really that physical layout of where different types of development are envisioned to occur and the types of development. Again, this is in draft form, but I want to tell you right off the bat, we start with looking at place types. Older land use plans would look at what we called land uses, and they would be very specific. And they would say, okay, this is exactly where residential needs to go, and it may even have a little corner carved out that says, okay, retail's on this corner. And what we found through the years is that sometimes if you have every corner carved out for retail, the market may not support that. And so you end up with some vacant lots on corners, or somebody saying, hey, I own that property, I wish I could do something else, but the land use plan says retail. So place types are an attempt to try to resolve that, provide more flexibility so that we say, this is the predominant use that is envisioned. But for instance, I'll tell you on the residential uses, we would take them right out to the corner in some cases that might be right for retail. And we would say within that residential place type that a supporting use of retail would be perfectly appropriate within that area if somebody brought that forward with some locational criteria. So again, we want to provide more flexibility for you to use the land use plan to your benefit without kind of tying your hands as things move forward. So these are the place types that were identified. And then the slide that we have on the screen right now, so it's floodplain, parks, open space, and agriculture. And then we get into the residential place types that are really different densities: estate, community, and compact residential. The more commercial place types with the community retail, which is the smaller community serving, versus a commercial center, which might be a bigger center that you could see along a major highway. A mixed use center is truly just that. It could have offices, it could have hotels, it could have retail, but it could also have some residential uses in it, all working together to create a vibrant place. Anderson development is an example of a mixed use type of activity that would be envisioned. And then more into the uses that are really supporting tax base, the industrial and heavy commercial. But then we broke out downtown as it's really a mixed use center in itself. It has residential, retail, civic, parks, all types of uses, but it's distinct from other newer mixed use centers that may come. And then schools. And so I'm not going to, one more slide and then I'll go through it in more detail. So really this is the summary that tells you, how we have started to look at new development areas in the community. So really, what we found in evaluating the community is you're almost sitting in a cradle between two floodplains. So if you see those two blue lines going on the east and west side of the community, it just so happens that downtown is probably right in the highest land between those two floodplains, which is often the case when folks, back in the day, laid out communities. And so as you look at this, we really started looking at that floodplain and said, it's almost creating a good boundary for this next phase for you to push your growth without having a lot of development that crosses that. And the reason for that is crossing that floodplain can become costly from a mobility standpoint if you have to provide more bridges. It can be costly to be able to extend your infrastructure, your utilities to those areas. So really, we're looking at where are your utilities today and where does it make sense to phase additional utilities so that you are doing this in a fiscally sensitive manner, the future growth of the community, and not just jumping out to remote areas. So just going through it, we're going to go through each of these very quickly so you can see each of them broken out. Each of the place types has a character and intent. And then this is the parks and open space. You can see where those are allocated around the community. It has a primary use as well as a secondary use. So those are those supported uses that would be appropriate in a place type. The next slide starts to get into agriculture. So you can see outside of the floodplain areas, outside of the kind of that growth area within the city, would be envisioned to be maintained as agricultural activities in those areas. Next slide starts to get into the lowest density residential, a minimum 2-acre lot size for what we call the estate residential single-family detached. The next slide gets into community retail or community residential, and you see a lot of those more remote areas on the north end of town are envisioned to be some of those higher growth residential areas in new neighborhoods north of 30. As we continue in, we have the compact residential. This is where we start to get into that mix of, like traditional old downtown areas. Sometimes the family may live in a big, 2,500 square foot house that was built in 1900, and grandma may live around the corner on a lot in a cottage home, and the kids can look in on the grandmother. Well, that's kind of what this compact residential is looking like. It's got more of a range of housing types to create that type of community where different generations can look in on each other. Next slide is that community retail. It's that less intense retail that's really more neighborhood serving. So you see it in smaller nodes and along some of your secondary thoroughfares. And then we get into the next slide. The commercial centers, those are along your major highway corridors. Much of the land along I-30 would be envisioned to infill with more of the commercial center to draw folks from around the region to spend their dollars in Mount Pleasant. Next slide, mixed use centers. You see just north of downtown, the Anderson development, and then the potential that there might be a third one over on the east side of town at this point. Industrial and heavy commercial. So again, we've looked at many of those existing commercial or existing industrial and heavy commercial sites, those businesses that are there today. Rather than line out entire highway corridors with industrial, we tend to look more at creating major nodes so that there can be other development in between that may support those heavier commercial uses. And we also looked at the existing zoning throughout your city to make sure that we weren't changing any future land use designations in a way that we're taking away property rights from individuals that might have zoning in place. And then continuing on into the downtown, and that's really that focused area, not just the center of town, but the neighborhoods surrounding it. And then next one would be schools. We wanted to go ahead and get those added on here because we think they're important community assets and we need to understand how they're serving the community. And then finally, I guess that was the last one. We'll talk a bit more about the parks in just a few minutes. So if you want to continue on, the draft thoroughfare plan. So from a mobility standpoint, evaluating those systems that are in place, you have so many TxDOT corridors in the community that are really serving the day-to-day needs of moving cars in a pretty good way. So we're not looking in the core community at a number of additional streets. We have designated the streets all the way from interstate highway to frontage roads, principal arterials and highways, which would be the TxDOT corridors that aren't Interstate 30, major and minor arterials. Collectors get more into the neighborhood level to get people out to the arterials. And then we're looking specifically at downtown thoroughfares because Those need to be very walkable. Sometimes they have parking associated with them. So we're looking at some specific standards for those as well. The dotted lines on the map, they're a little bit hard to see, but I think Robert might have shared it with you previously, indicate interim roads. The dashed lines indicate proposed roads on this plan. So to get into the next slide, the other thing we want to point out is this particular chapter of the plan is looking at your rights of way. So let's say you have a 60, 70-foot right-of-way on a roadway. In a rural area, it may have that cross-section that you see on the far right of the screen, versus an urban area, that right-of-way may have some parking, it may have some travel lanes. Probably the dimension I chose isn't appropriate, but you can see that that same right-of-way may have a very different treatment based on the context. So we think it's important that we address that and talk about that in that chapter of the report, to say, depending on the context in downtown, you probably need to be looking at within that right-of-way accommodating parking and pedestrians and trees and maybe outdoor dining and those types of things, versus a rural cross-section where it may be, you know, the roadway itself and bar ditches. So that will be something that we touch on in the report. So next slide. So the master thoroughfare plan, some of the main things that we have proposed is mainly on the north side of town, some new thoroughfares. Just if you'll recall, we showed a lot of new residential areas up there. So some new roadways up there are showing up. Now, as we show those on a map, we typically try to look at where property lines are. This is the highest level of roadway thoroughfare map that you will have in the city. And it's saying a corridor could occur within this area. It gives you something to be able to talk to property owners as a developer wants to develop property and say, how do we accommodate roadways? So it's not the exact location, but it's saying we need to be making connections between point A and point B. The other major thing that's coming out of this is we think it's real important to have in your comprehensive plan the desire to support that type of development we talked about along Interstate 30. We think it's important to connect the frontage roads. So by having this in your comprehensive plan, it gives you a little bit more support. There will be some implementation strategies about discussions that need to be taking place as you move forward with TxDOT to see if you can get those accommodated as facilities are upgraded. So those are some of the major things from the thoroughfare plan. And then if we want to continue on to the next slide, we'll get into the parks, recreation, and trails. So essentially it started with looking at your existing parks. We have a lot of detail in the draft report that we're about to turn over to staff to start reviewing on each of the parks, what facilities are included in each park, as well as getting into some specifics on upgrades that you may want to look at for parks and follow on improvements that you may want to make. So again, in looking at the parks, you've got some really good, you've got 13 existing parks within the community. And then as we go on to the next slide, what we did is those yellow areas that you see on the map, so everything that was residential on the land use plan, we colored yellow on the parks map. And then what we did is we created a circle around every one of your parks, your existing parks. And that circle represents about a 10-minute walk. And the reason for that is the National Recreation and Parks Association recommends that some sort of park facility be located within about a 10-minute walk of residences within an area. So we just wanted to take a look and say, level of service, how does this look? And as you can see, your existing parks from a geographic coverage standpoint are really doing a great job of serving your community. The exception would be some of the future development areas that you're seeing. The yellow is sticking out there that maybe doesn't have a park associated with it. So the recommendation would be, if there are any new parks in the future, that they potentially be provided as a part of those new residential developments that occur. And there could be some agreements put in place in order to help that happen. But the primary focus of the plan is on upgrading existing parks because you've really got a great system in place. And then the opportunity areas, so that's just identifying those 4 areas that might be areas that are focused on as new development occurs, with discussions with those developers about potentially providing some pieces of land for parks and recreation purposes, which at the end of the day are adding value to their development. So that is the quick overview of where we are and the primary components of the comprehensive plan. You can see we started off in August with that kickoff with preliminary direction, talking to stakeholders in the community, stakeholder interviews, focus group discussions, and here we are in spring 2022 with Community Forum 3. This is our original schedule where we said we would be doing plan refinement in May and then potential adoption in the summer of 2022. So if we can go on to the next slide, we have put some tentative dates on here, and we think there's the potential to be a little bit ahead of schedule if you would like for us to be ahead of schedule. We don't have to maintain this, but we want to keep the public input open. We want to get these draft reports put together and get them back out for the community to take a look at, for your boards and commissions to take a look at and make sure everybody's comfortable with them. But the preliminary direction we're looking at is we've extended Community Forum number 3 through the end of this week. We kicked it off April 6th with some information for people to start to weigh in on and make sure that we set the bar in the right place and we've truly reflected what the community has told us through this process. Tomorrow night, I will still be in town and I will be making a similar presentation to your Parks Board related to concepts and highlights just related to parks. Get any feedback from them. And then the tentative schedule is May 5th to come back to the Parks Board for a recommendation to City Council related to the Parks Plan. And then come back to Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation for the comprehensive plan on May 10th, with a potential to come to City Council for public hearings related to an adoption on May 17th. Again, that's the schedule we have at this point. If we find that people have more to say in the community and we need to be incorporating more things, then we want to maintain that ability to do that and still meet the original schedule we had in June of this year. Sorry, I held the button just almost long enough. I can answer any questions you have.
Yeah, Council, you got questions?
At the point when you mentioned a couple of times in the early parts of this presentation that some of the feedback and input was to try to grow but maintain the small town atmosphere, how do you recommend that happen and what does that look like? What do you not do in order to keep that small town atmosphere vibe or reality going?
A lot of what we do is we try to identify, or we have tried through this process to drill down into what are those unique characteristics that say Mount Pleasant, so that as new development occurs, and one of the things we've noticed is locations of schools and parks in the community, and it's almost like you have a subset of neighborhoods, and that some folks may say, well, I'm more associated with Journey Park, or my park is this park, and to some extent some of the schools are really becoming some of those centers. So I think by breaking the scale down of the community as future growth occurs, but making sure that some of those key parameters related to Mount Pleasant, about having places where you can go, whether it's entertainment or dining or the grocery store, where you can see your neighbors and still feel like it's a small community because you're seeing people you know. And so I think as we've tried to lay out the community, we've tried to do so in a way that there's still that feeling that people know their neighbors and have those opportunities to run into each other around town. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does shed some light on what you're talking about. And to me, it's been that way a lot in Mount Pleasant in the past, just looking at it through the rearview mirror. because of the way the way we are divided, 271 kind of goes as our main middle. We've got Highway 49 and I-30, where we got east and west major corridors. So we've got a northeast section of town, southeast, north. It seems like it sort of happened anyhow in quadrants. I don't know, going forward, we're going to have to move beyond some of those quadrants to grow. So that's the reason I wanted you to elaborate a little bit how you maintain that small town feeling.
It just not to drag it out, but some of those corridors you mentioned, I think of those as the coming together areas. So you may have neighborhoods on either side that are kind of in quadrants, but a lot of your businesses are along those corridors, and that's where people are coming together and getting that sense of community. And the thought is, as you move north, I-30, which is kind of that edge at this point, not completely, there's a lot of development to the north, but that becomes more important for that to become one of those coming together areas.
One of the reasons that Mount Pleasant grew so much southward is to incorporate the opportunity to include Pittsburgh shoppers and eating and people working over here, because that was our largest, closest neighboring town. So growing south for like Walmart and the bigger anchor stores made more sense. That's one of the reasons it's been hard to push them north, is because of the numbers coming out of Pittsburgh. The other second largest would be, of course, interstate travel.
Can you, when you say that adding the service roads, of course, I think adding service roads from 1402 all the way out to 1001 is just imperative to continue our industrial growth. I think it would help tremendously. So you said having this on our plan would help us. Can you elaborate on that just a second for me?
Yeah, so just having that as an action item and having that as a part of your thoroughfare plan really can instigate the discussions with TxDOT to be able to raise that level of discussion and say, hey, this is important to our future, to our economic growth, to be able to make this happen. And I will say that oftentimes getting some of your supporting representatives and others within the area on board with that as well and helping them understand. So there'll be some things that we spell out in the implementation strategy, suggestions on how to move that forward.
I noticed you didn't mention anything about the loop out through there, the possibility of the growth out through there for economic development and.
So as we look at it, I think that there's certainly opportunity for that and for the loop and for additional development in the future. But I guess as we've looked at the project, at the plan so far in the time frame, we're thinking that there's great opportunities for infill development. It's not to say that you turn your back on anything that maybe comes up further out, but that essentially we're really trying to look at infill and really focusing in on those areas within the community.
Well, I would think that would be an area that you'd want to look for business to come into. I noticed on your chart there you've got several areas there, more or less in town, I call it.
So let me make sure I'm answering the right question. When you said loop, your old thoroughfare plan almost had a loop that was much larger, that was taking some roads further out around Mount Pleasant. I thought that there was an older thoroughfare plan that showed some roads that were further out beyond the floodplain and some connections way into the future. So if you're talking about the loop just to the west of downtown, definitely we see that as a major corridor for business. So the land use plan that we showed there, and I'm sorry, I misunderstood where the question was going. The direction that the plan is going for that area is, again, really trying to solidify and continue to build on that industrial base and even carry that development all the way down into airport supporting development further south. So we really see that as part of that economic engine for the community. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay, council, we have any further questions? Okay, we certainly appreciate you and that update on the comprehensive plan. I know a lot of time and effort goes into it, a lot of hard work, and I just want to say thank you for what you've done so far.
Thank you. We've really enjoyed working with your community.
Thank you for Commissioner.
Okay, we'll now go ahead and close that item on the agenda, and we'll move on to item 4. Item 4 is to discuss and consider approval of a final plat of the Bandera Estates Phase 2, situated in the B Merchant Survey Abstract Number 358, City of Mount Pleasant, Titus County, Texas, located at the northeast corner of the intersection of East 8th Street and North Lide Avenue. Robert?
Mayor and Council, tonight we're bringing the final plat of Bandera 2 residential subdivision to you for final approval. The plat consists of 27 lots, residential lots, and 2 of the lots are actually are designated as drainage and detention. This is currently zoned SF2, so the minimum lot size is 7,000, but during the process of the preliminary plat, there was some issue with some of the lots as they were brought in, this configuration of the streets. Pull it over that. And lots that are on the, there were a couple of lots on the south cul-de-sac, and I don't know if you recall that there was lots 23, 24, and 25 that didn't quite make that 7,000 square foot minimum. But the outer lots, if you can tell, this was already happening along the edge of this property, which was actually phase 1. Some of those lots were allowed to be platted that were less than the minimum square footage. So just to try to accommodate that configuration and get this built, there were 3 lots in here we had to do a slight adjustment to get those to be buildable, and that's what that. One of the lots actually that we actually had to lose because of the placement of the street. The developer had to is going to have to, there's an unbuildable piece of a lot here adjacent to the existing home. I'm sorry, it's right down here. It's going to be, that ended up being shifted because of that reason. And you had actually approved a replat prior to this that we had last month that sort of accommodated what was going on there. Along with that, during this process of the final plat, it was discovered there were a few lots that, because what we're asking when you go around the cul-de-sac, a couple of corner things in here, that and the garage requirement that was causing some issues with this development, mainly because of the way these streets were built to a certain degree. And it's not really uncommon. There's a 25-foot front yard setback in the city currently, but plenty of cities that I've worked for in the past have really reduced the front yard setbacks to about 20 feet. 20 feet has been a more common setback in a lot of communities. I think the zoning here has been at 25 for years and years and years, and just it hasn't been looked at. So they've asked for, went to the Board of Adjustment and asked for to be able to reduce that front setback so they can make sure that they can get the garages in there that'll fit in there, and that was the main purpose of that. Also to make sure that house pad, we also have a 25-foot rear yard setback, which was squeezing that building envelope down. So that was the reasoning for the BOA to allow them. That's for all the lots it's based on all the lots in there. Again, the 2 streets were initially, when we took the preliminary plat in, subdivision code calls out a maximum distance for cul-de-sacs for fire protection, but this actually was more restrictive than the fire code. The fire code would allow these cul-de-sacs as long as they had this 90-plus diameter radius around there for the truck to turn around. So that was the fire department reviewed that, and we're good with the ability to turn around within those cul-de-sacs. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. In phase 1, well, yeah, it looks like I have to count them. It looks. I think there's about 18 lots in phase 1. And this is phase 2. This is the rest of it. They built around, phase 1 was the exterior around the street edge. That was phase 1. And this is really the interior part of it. This is phase 2. So there was about 18 lots. I said 19 lots. And then the inside, there's actually, there were 29 lots, but 2 lots had to be used for detention, so we took those out. Yeah, 27 plus about 18, 45. And again, the only other thing that we'll tell you that this is, we initially, the engineering was approved. We are still working a few things out with the development as it goes on, but they're very minor in nature, and we're trying to get those resolved. But at this point, it's in compliance with the preliminary plat, and we would recommend that you approve the final plat and tonight, and we'll go on with that. And he's anxious to get going. He's already started going, but he'd like to get this resolved to get the plat done. I will tell you that we have an extended warranty on the roads up there. We asked them to give us an extended bond for, instead of 1 year, we have a 2-year warranty on the street to ensure that we'll have maintenance on that for a couple of years. And they're asphalt. Lastly, the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you've read there, that they approved this last week by a vote of 3-0. And I'll answer any more questions you may have.
The floor is open for questioning. Okay, if we have no questions, I'll open the floor for a motion on this item.
I move for the approval of the final plat of Bandera Phase 2.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Walker, second by Councilman Dale. Madam Secretary, record a vote on this item.
Aye.
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 We have a unanimous vote. We'll now close the item on the agenda. This time we'll move on to item 5. Item 5 is to discuss and consider approval of the preliminary plat of RB Capital I-30 West, being 13.22 acres of land, Citrotech, within the corporate limits of the city of Mount Pleasant, being part of the Turbevi Survey Abstract number 580, and being all of called 13.219 acre tract of land conveyed from Stephen L. Cook and Margaret A. Cook to RECAPITAL on January 15, 2021 by a general warranty deed recorded in Titus County Clerk's document number 2021-0248. Robert.
Mayor and Council, this is basically it came in, initially we're going to be a dedication plat for the right-of-way for this road that's going to be built there. This is a two-way minor collector, going to be built at 37-foot back-to-back and a 60-foot right-of-way. Sorry, I don't have it. I had to turn it sideways to get it in there. So this has been proposed by Mr. Ricky Baker to sort of a joint public-private attempt to get a better connection, sort of a collector or for that school traffic that occurs there during the week, and have another way of helping that out. And at the same time, this will actually open up a north-south little minor collector there and potentially create some probably development that could occur on this remaining tract of land there with this roadway connection there. The thing we'll need to do is there's the adjacent to the college's training center there. We'll be moving that driveway out of there. That's part of the requirement. I think some of you may be aware of that. And then they'll have to get a TxDOT permit, look at some drainage issues with TxDOT, and also the typical trick, they call it a driveway permit that you have to get when you connect to any TxDOT facility. You've got to get a permit, and generally a TIA also is part of that permitting process. So they'll be doing that on the next step before they come back to us. What needs to happen now is this is the preliminary plat that will get the process started. They will turn in engineering and get their TxDOT permits in order, come back to us with those, and at that point then they can move forward with construction of the roadway. I think the applicants here tonight represent their side of it, if you'd like to talk to them. and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have, staff.
I think this is gonna be a concrete street, I believe, is what's planned, isn't that right?
So, Robert, has TxDOT been engaged to conduct a traffic study to see what this actually will do, though, for the school, and if like traffic lights or just flashing lights or stop signs, there will be sufficient to, handle the traffic that we're trying to relieve?
Well, I think the applicant's in conversation with TxDOT right now, and they will conduct a TIA. We've talked about this at the P&Z meeting that, you have to build the facility sort of first before they're going to make a recommendation on a light. They don't generally, you have to warrant a light. That's kind of built after the facility's built, then they'll have to do a study on that. So that's generally how I've always seen it. And you don't try to warrant that light before you have the actual facility in place. Once it's in place, they'll come back and look at the traffic movements at that point and warrant that traffic, do those counts, and see if maybe a light is warranted. And they're actually going to need something there to control that. Then a light makes more sense at that intersection to have to control it. But I believe, it's just been my experience is they have to wait to warrant that thing till the facility's built.
And probably because this is a school, it'll be more easily acceptable for the state, to have this thing timed also for coming in and out in the mornings and in the afternoons at 3 o'clock and all, because the schools are involved there.
Yes, sir. I think it'll be a much easier way to, your traffic counts will be at peak maximum, both AM and PM, and that's what they look at.
Please clarify, when you say build facility, you talking about building a street or building a building? Well, I've lost somewhere in this.
Sorry, they usually refer to roadways as roadway facilities.
So you're saying that you can't ask TxDOT to do a study with a proposed road. It has to be built, and then there's no way to know if what they'll do with it, if they will give you lights, to know how it's going to facilitate the traffic in and out, ingress and egress, that stuff.
It's just been my experience when your road's not there, you don't have the way of doing traffic counts on a road that's not existent. You can't determine those counts. They have to be real counts. You have to have a real traffic study with an existing facility there.
So there's no opportunity for a study for proposed when you're having traffic issues in a certain area when the state's involved. There's no way to know any suggestions on what could be done to alleviate the traffic issues. You just kind of hope, you just do something and hope that it works.
I'm not sure I could answer that 100%. I'm just basing it on everything that I've done in the past. That generally you build a facility and then at that point, you warrant them. And there has been some. If you were building a major arterial, a large road that was connecting to a TxDOT roadway, I think that might be a different story when you knew that you were using it. The only time I remember that actually happening, and we still didn't put lights in at the point we did four-way stops, was a major loop road. It was a bypass for a highway, intended to be a bypass, and we had to build a facility. We had to put basically started out with temporary four-way stops on it, and it did take building the facility before we could warrant the light that had to go in one place. But at the interim, they use these usually four-way stops, and then they do a warrant study, and then it comes back to telling the traffic movements, and at that point, does it warrant putting in a signal?
So as part of the recommendation for this road to divert traffic once it's in place, to start having traffic when it comes in the morning, for example, to head west on Burton, the service road there, and then turn right on this new road for the school to help alleviate all the traffic that goes in currently on Edwards right now as it is, because in the morning when I take my kids to school, it takes a long time to get through those lights. So is that one of the proposed traffic routes that's being discussed for this new road?
Well, I will stand sort of a little bit in the dark on this the service road that's out there now. Is that a one-way service road? So I'm not sure exactly how that alleviates it in there. It's because it's more of, to me, it's more like I would understand it be more like a PM. I guess it would be a morning thing when you're dropping off to divert and go down there. I guess I don't know the issue over there necessarily in the morning, I was just taking it for granted that the PM is pretty much difficult over there to PM.
I think the major understanding in some of the discussions is that is the ability to alleviate traffic, period, and at some point Judd and then will have to decide how to utilize it to make it alleviate traffic and make the situation safer for the children in and out. But they'll have to come up with a plan all by themselves, because they're going to continue and put a road through the actual school facility as well.
Let me just add, to alleviate the traffic from the junior high coming across there. So you would go up Edwards, you could take a left there, come down, go into the high school. I'm sure they'll probably put some type of turn lanes, possibly, is what I'm understanding, might be part of the project there in front of the school. This road will come out there in front of the church. Of course, the school owns that now, the church right there. So this road would come out there. So when you leave out of the school in the afternoon, you would come down, come out by Lowe's there on Ferguson Road right there. Of course, you'd have to get on it. Like we said, it's one way. So you'll be coming down Edwards and taking a left there, coming down it, and then taking a right, going to the school. But I think ball games, I think school activities, I think it'll alleviate a lot of traffic getting out of there in the evenings, and for baseball games, football games, baseball, all the different festivities. It looks to me like, but it is to alleviate traffic is what, absolutely, for the school.
That was totally my understanding, that this was just to try to take care of some of that peak AM and PM, and like you said, special events probably would. And again, having a road through there with that property that's adjacent to it, that makes all the sense to allow other development, whether it may be school related or not. And then you've got a roadway that's sort of for that particular development that's coming in there, and that'll help alleviate any future issues with more traffic that may be over there.
And I think some of the future development is, already in some talks and pretty enticing if you listen to some of the possibilities to come along there.
But back to my point about TxDOT and the traffic study and lights. I know right there from day one, if that's going to be used as a relief route. As it is today, without that road there right now, the buses come in the morning and the afternoon. They got the bus barn entrance back there. And so there's going to have to be some way to allow, that road will be no good to us unless there's a way to control the traffic. So that way they have their turn to turn in or out of that street, because the buses have priority when they come in and out of that bus barn. That's going to be right adjacent to the entrance of this new road.
Henry, I'll say this. We had a conversation last week with Judd, and I asked somewhat similar to that question. And my point was, do we have, if we don't have a light there to start with, is there an ability for one of the school police officers to control that traffic when you need it controlled? And he answered yes.
We can explore that with TxDOT. If there's interim traffic control, we can make that a request. When it got to the signalization, that's usually a warrant that has to happen. But like you're saying, maybe some either temporary control. If there's an issue going on there, sometimes they allow, for instance, like I said, the four-way stop thing, they may allow that to happen there. I think it's going to be more like a control thing, like you're suggesting, for an interim period of time until we can do a traffic study and ask for that, request that traffic study from TxDOT.
Question. Mr. Garrett, is there anything else you could add to this, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Anything else you can add for us tonight?
Yes, as Robert said, we got preliminary approval last week at the P&Z. This street, it definitely would relieve. If nothing else, if you've only got really one way in and one way out now, this quite simply is adding another way in and another way out. To your traffic question, that'll all be funneled through TxDOT at the appropriate time. I'm hopeful and thinking they will tell us when that appropriate time is. We certainly are all in agreement that it does need some type of traffic control. Personally, I think a four-way stop would be the ideal way to go rather than a stop sign. Stoplight rather than a stop sign. But This also opens up, as Robert said, it opens up that 13-acre tract for additional development. Currently zoned, I believe, multifamily. No, we don't have any other plans for that at this time. We've talked to some folks and have a couple of things en route. This also will impact the training center, and we've met with those guys at the college, and it will alter their ingress and egress into the center. That's all on the drawing and has all been engineered. That's about all I have left to say.
Dan, if you hang around, I'll give you Bandera again. I don't know why I tried to tie both of them to you.
All right, thank you. Council, we have no further questions at this time? Okay, the floor will be open for a motion on this item.
I'll move the preliminary plat for Arby Capital's I-30 West 13.22 acre road.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Adams, second by Councilman Dale. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries 4-1. And we'll go ahead and close that item. We'll now move on to item 6 on the agenda. Item 6 is the MPIDC Executive Director update. Mr. Tafoya.
Good evening, Mayor, governing body. It's nice to be here today. Have a quick presentation I'll throw up on the screen. Thanks, Datamax. And Candace, with 2 minutes to go before 5 o'clock, I'm getting my email. So, as it gets ready to load, one of the things I just wanted to share was this was in part shared. You can Control L if you need to. I think. Oh, all right, there you go. Let me make sure that works. There it goes. So some of this is a pared down version of what I shared at the State of the Economy address with some alterations as well. But it's just a quick update, kind of an end of the year meant to be wrap for 2021 and some of the things that are going on in 2022 so far. Yeah, we'll go from there. And I mean this to also to introduce not only to the council, who I know knows who my board is and what we do over the EDC, but to introduce to the community and anybody who may be watching on YouTube and in the audience tonight. So Ermin Hensel, Brian Niblett. Ermin Hensel is our president. Brian Niblett is our vice president. Jason Snodgrass is our secretary, our treasurer. And Mr. Chris Elliott and Mr. Mike Price, who's newly appointed. Mr. Stan Garrett, who was one of our former board members and stepped off. So Mike Price replaced him recently in the past few months. Excuse me? Yes, sir. Yeah, Jason Snodgrass. And so this is myself. Been practicing economic development for more than 15 years, certified economic developer. I have an MBA, and then we have Miss Jeanette Moreno. She has an associate's in accounting, and she's earning her bachelor's in business, currently 4.0 GPA. So one of the things that is important as an economic development organization when we're responding to companies, and one of the things that we track as an organization, are our local economic development indicators. So anything that's affecting the economy. So we also track a lot of federal and state indicators, but we offer a lot of our local data on our website. And I don't know if some of the people in the community or even on the council may not be aware of how available that data is. We compile it. We even go to planning and zoning, grab a lot of the data, and compile it into more infographic kind of formats and sortable formats. So there's a lot of PDFs and things we take that data, put it in Excel spreadsheets, and have it on our website so you can actually sort it by year and get numbers that you want to get. So we have all that available because we want people to understand who are looking to invest in our community, that we're investing in our community and where we are and trends going on within our community. So one of the things we talked about at the State of the Economy address was the 2020 census data was rolling out. It's kind of been a slow rollout, especially for smaller communities. So I kind of wanted to focus a little bit on just the decade difference between 2010 and 2020. So we had a small jump in population. If you don't know a whole lot about demographics and data, I started off in research and economic development. Spent about 3 or 4 years there. But the census data is the best data you can get. And just for our ranking purposes, the state of Texas had about a 62 response rate for the 2020 census, ranked about 39th in the country. So not really that great, but still it was a good data set. There is no data set in the world that will get you above like 15, 20% kind of a response rate. So the census data is considered the gold standard. And so any other kind of third party, maybe you paid for services, are all extrapolated from census data. So census data, though, is slow, and it kind of is a year or two behind. So the third-party services like Nielsen, Claritas, and any number of demographic companies extrapolate off of those using different algorithms. And so it's important to understand that the census is tracking us at a 2020 of 16,000. We're probably right around high 16s, low 17s. And the biggest thing I would imagine, I would say here is we've become a more educated population. If you look at the bachelor's degree or higher, we went from 9.9% of our population to 16.5, and we also got a little bit older as a population, but still relatively young. Yeah, 2 questions. Yes. What? Yes, sir. I don't know that there's a way to track that without hitting every college and knowing who's here and what they have. Census data tracks it'll do associate's degree, K-12, no college, no graduation, high school, some college, 4-year, and then above, I think. They don't really necessarily break it down into that order. I wouldn't know. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question, Nathan, under households. I know good and well that we built more than 12 houses in 10 years. So I don't see how that number even correlates for a 10-year time period. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
A household is not a house. So with population migration demographics, people coming in and coming out. Actually, we have we'll get to that slide in a little bit and we'll kind of compare it. But a household is more tracking families, which some people we may have built more houses here, but if some have fallen out or were abandoned or were knocked down, the net number may not have changed that much, or that the census is tracking. So maybe it's a response rate from the citizens of Mount Pleasant.
Well, just again, to elaborate, you said it's not necessarily the houses, but then right below it, you got families. So how do you differentiate between households if that's not considered an actual home or a structure versus families? So can you define that?
Nope, I do not know. I'm sorry. That's a good question. I'll get back to you on that and the actual definition.
Proceed.
Thank you. So demographic, race and ethnicity. I'll point out 3 things here. For white Caucasian, there's kind of an average line up and down, and as far as even a projection for 2025, around the 9,200, 300 mark. Black population decreased slightly from 14.4% to 13.9%. And then probably a significant indicator here is the Hispanic origin on the bottom line, growing from 2010, 50% of our population to more than 55% of our population, and expected to continue to increase in 2025. So, as as that relates to our comprehensive plan, things being available in Spanish, our schools, what they have to make available in Spanish. That's an important thing to understand about our community and trends that are happening here. Yes, sir.
Quick update on Hispanic. We get a report from the Mount Pleasant ISD every year, and just so the public knows, on that report, in our Mount Pleasant School District, it's 71.9% Hispanic is the current percentage, just FYI.
Good to know. Thank you. So housing, close to 60% of our population are homeowners. And I made a joke about the dating world, but there are more females, just slightly, than males in our population right now. This is a different data source. This is on our website under our site selection protocol, which is separate. They use a third-party data source, so they have our median age at 31 here. Census has us at 32. Not a whole lot to see here. We spend a lot. This is kind of in a cascading order on shelter, transportation, spend a lot of money on food and beverage in our community, and then go down to healthcare and utilities. And so median household expenditures are around $48,860. Might need to advance the slide. Thank you, sir. So you guys are well aware of kind of the historic year-over-year, month-over-month sales tax performance. So we continue to increase and grow. I won't spend a lot of time on this. I know you see this a lot, and so I'll just continue over that, other than to state that we're continuing to grow. So exciting. There we go. This is just a sales tax analysis graphical year by year. So this is a lot of data, and again, we have information like this on our website, but I'll show you the next slide, which is a better way of kind of graphically seeing what is on this table. And it has to do with the number of permits issued, right, by the city of Mount Pleasant. And so this is a better way to kind of understand some of the trends here. So to the point of homes, new and remodeled, you can see year over year from 2008 to I think that's 2021. The number in green, 72, and that includes new and remodel permits. And then we have commercial. You can kind of see there's more of an average trend line there, but there's definitely kind of an upward trend on home builds. And then also tellingly is the multifamily in yellow. There's 2008, and there's another one in 2015, and then 2019. 3 1-in-1 permits pulled for that. So, which is an indicator and an issue, and one of the things that I think is one of the constraints for the growth, both for employers in our area, is housing. I think it's a major growth constraint, and specifically workforce housing, which would be these multifamily townhomes, condos, types of housing mix. So one of the other economic indicators that we look at is our labor market, and so we track this month by month, and then also quarterly for larger regions than ours. And again, we have back archive data that you can click on and find points in time. We track this on our website, and we publish it every time we get it, including sales tax and labor market information. But it's important to kind of see here is January in 2021, Titus County specifically had a 6.4 unemployment rate, and we're now at 4.9. And our labor force, available labor force, so non-military and in between 18, I think it is, and I think the number is between 65. The available labor force has grown, and most of those have been soaked up into the workforce, and they're working at jobs. So we're currently at 4.9%, and it lets you know where other communities might be siphoning from. So somewhere like Silver Springs or Hopkins County, which has a very similar but growing due to their proximity to the Metroplex, has like a 3.8 currently 3.8 unemployment rate, which means that's a tight labor market. They're scrounging for labor. and they start poaching and they start raising their rates. Yes, sir.
So are we, every corner's got a sign, help wanted.
What's that?
I said, so are we here in Titus County, every corner's got a help wanted sign on it, on the corner or on their marquee, or you go in and, everyone's hiring. So, sometimes that figure there, I know that's based off of unemployment claims. So when they fall off of that radar.
No, absolutely. And there's a number of places we can go from that will track Indeed postings and I think it's a Glassdoor. There's a Jobs EQ, MZ data, where you can they'll try to get a really comprehensive picture of where people are coming from, zip codes they're coming from in a regional labor shed. And we have some of that data as well. But this is kind of a nice lifetime indication of what's occurring. But you're absolutely right. We see a lot of signs up in our community, and a lot of it has to do with the growth, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So we'll just recap real quick and talk about some of the new projects and announcements that are occurring in the community, which you may or may not be aware of. One of the things we want to make sure you guys are aware of, as we represent the communities, I've been appointed to the Texas Economic Development Council's Board of Directors. You can see here Miss Adriana Cruz. She's the Executive Director for the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and she's an ex officio member, attends all of our meetings as well, but it's the largest economic development group in the country, and so happy to be part of that and representing this community. Also, I think a really good thing for this community is I was able to obtain through the International Economic Development Council and Entrepreneurship Development Professional certification as well. We're moving a lot into helping small businesses, and this is to allow, there's a number of reasons for this certification, a lot which was kind of included already with the Certified Economic Development credential, but are the ability to be able to help small businesses grow and understand what some of their needs are. And there'll be some information rolling out later this year where we'll kind of talk a little bit more about where we're looking to deploy these types of services in that certification. So attended the 2022 Winter Conference in Sugar Land early this year in February, Southwestern Rail Conference just a few weeks ago. And one of the things that actually didn't make it onto this presentation, but I was just recently, I still have my welcoming packet to the Northeast Texas. Judge Lee gave me a call a few weeks ago, and the Northeast Texas Regional Mobile Authority, which is I volunteered to get on, but they do a lot with roads, rail, any sort of transportation, including passenger and freight rail types of transportation modes, and had to be sworn in yesterday, and protecting the Constitution in the state of Texas and all sorts of things. So it was a much bigger deal than I originally anticipated, but happy to be on that board as well. And looking, when we're talking about the school, and we're talking about, hey, what is the impact there in TxDOT and all of our side roads, what we can do to add and benefit our community there. So excited about that. 2021 highlights, kind of how we wrapped up the year, was Sebek Building, which we just kind of announced and closed on within the last month, but we're working with this company spring of last year, and then really highly focused when it came into the spec building for specifically for their new laser in around August last year. And so one of the things that I'm happy to report is the revolving loan fund was finalized. I think I was here a year ago, and we got permission to transfer that from the city. Had kind of sat there for a long time. And we're about to launch, kind of do a promotion of that for the community. So we're glad the USDA finally approved all the dotted I's and crossed T's. We partnered with SizeUp to implement new business intelligence tools to help small businesses. And we also use local intel. We have a small business section on our website, and this is to really help give enterprise level data intelligence and market intelligence to anybody looking to start a business here. So we have a really rich history from the Preferreds to Diamond C to, Pilgrims, of entrepreneurs growing businesses here. These guys started small, and so we really want to assist because I think it's in the water here, the next generation of those entrepreneurs. We also had the Monticello power plant, the stack implosion. It's kind of a big deal locally. We hosted Mike Grella, who set up the economic development program for Amazon 12 years ago and left 3 years ago to start his own consultancy. And he came here on a 3-day tour and kind of did a site evaluation for us. And we're actually working with him to actually right now host within the next month or two, inviting a bunch of site consultants to do a familiarization tour. That's kind of the way. I can explain it more if you want, but it's a basic way for people who are in commercial brokerage firms who do a lot of locations for companies looking for places to go, or specific site consultant agencies who are running around with projects as well, to kind of to understand, be introduced to your community. So we're excited about that too. And I'll talk a little more about the $25,000 grant we gave for CDL training to NTCC, and as well as that $62,500 from the Texas Workforce Commission. And then you guys know about the sports complex grand opening, which is a beautiful project. So really grateful for all your hard work on that. It's good to know that we're investing in our community and there's a quality of life component to that. So it helps in attraction and the marketing piece on my end. So we wanted to let you know a little bit about some of the proposals and the RFIs that we had to respond to last year. So we saw 141% increase, which is a big deal. We have start off our board meetings at TEDC, and the directors are like, hey guys, be quiet. We don't care. Everybody's busy. Nobody has time to respond to proposals, whatever. We're moving on from that because it's just a big deal. Texas is really getting bombarded as a state, and the amount of leads. Sometimes we'll get 2 or 3 per week from the governor's office, and that's in addition to all the other leads that we get from being locally generated. So it's a really big increase, and it's been a lot. So it's been fun to respond to some of them. We have to sort some of out. These are the ones we responded to though. And then 2022, this actually goes to March, but if you actually look at this chart, you'll see that in March, April, you kind of see this uptick, this hump in the middle of the year. So from March to right around September, October, is really the biggest year when companies make a lot of decisions, which makes a lot of sense. So I do a lot of my planning and for the community and set up for next year closeout projects in the November through kind of February, March timeframe. So, which is in April alone, I think it responded to, we had about 5 or 6. You know what? That's not true. I think we've had, it might be a little bit higher, around 8 or 9 RFIs that we've responded to, or proposals that we've sent out just this month. But this is kind of just a quick update on where they're coming from the governor's office, our direct site location partners. We have a number of ways we work with to get leads, and then by industry type, you kind of see the donut there. Yes.
What would you say the level of interest on a lot of those that you're getting from the governor's office, or any of them on a 1 to 10 scale, or any of them 8 or 9, or some of them still in progress now, or are you still talking to them, or?
So the way it's very much a sales funnel, in the sense that kiss a lot of frogs before you get that prince or the princess. And so from the governor's office, we probably have active right now anywhere from 3 to 10 active leads, and this year I've had 1 or 2 second calls from the governor's office to provide additional information on some of our sites. But sometimes no one in the state is necessarily getting a call back. It's a year before those people move. And so economic development is notorious for being this really long sales cycle and sales funnel. So I've seen projects that are being announced now that when I first moved here 3 or 4 years ago, the RFIs are coming out. Did I answer your question? I think I might have remembered. Okay, thank you. So we sold the spec building in the park. Really happy that it was Diamond C, and happy about their growth. Some of the stuff that they did that you're fairly well known They bought the Parker. Sure, they bought a 48-acre campus, but they bought their old operations, and they also bought the building on 1402 Industrial Road, put a new face on it, and I'll be creating some jobs there as well as in about 20,000 square feet. It's currently operational. Prefert, they're doing a Q3 and into this year, $6.9 million expansion. This is when you're near Walmart and Home Depot, you kind of see that they're attaching two buildings. You can kind of see it in that first drawing, the bigger one. And a lot of that is for their new laser stacking equipment. So they currently have two lasers now, and they're getting like their stacker, which is where a lot of these industrial, which is the same thing with Diamond C, right? These industrial stacking lasers where you're able to put a lot of steel on, and then it feeds right into a laser cutter. So that'll create about 10 to 15 jobs, about a $7 million investment. And then starting this year and kind of moving into next year, they're going to be doing another $25 million investment and creating another 60 jobs. So we're working with them on some of the package. They've come to us and approached us about what we could do to help some of that impact. But one of the things that's interesting about them is they're working with us, and this will play into a conversation I'll talk about shortly, but they have currently 14 robots and robotic arms in the plant, and they will have 40 by the end of this year. So a huge increase. I mean, and that impacts our workforce training center, coding. Are we working on programming? We know what robots are getting. So we're tooling with NTCC for our industrial training center to make sure we're on the front end of these new changes and adaptations that are happening, and automation changes that are happening within our industrial sector. Mid-America Pet Food is doing a $40 million investment. You can kind of see this when you're might be driving to Dallas for the weekend. So 105,000 square foot warehouse, 12,000 square foot office. And that'll create about 12 to 14 new jobs by the end of this year to almost 200, so 195 jobs. And if you didn't know, they were acquired by the second private equity group, TA Associates, in December of 2020. So Taskmaster also wrapped up, and they're putting some final touches on a few things, and they've approached us as well. But they did put a 44,000 square foot warehouse at their plant to make room for a lot of the expansions that they're doing, and to do one of these pieces of equipment that you can kind of see some pictures of here. But they've been approached. I mean, this is a machine that is at the Ford plant in Michigan, and they've had Tesla contact them about this. It's a German piece of equipment. It balances, it puts the tire on the wheel, balances it, loads it in seconds, and it does a lot of these in a minute, and it wraps that sucker up and palletizes it. So it's a really interesting piece of equipment. We're working with them on some of their pieces, but they've approached us as well. They need some assistance, but we're happy they're making investments in our community as well. Cost Concrete, just outside city limits. It's kind of in the county, but doing a smaller, comparatively $500,000 investment under new leadership. The son is kind of taken over and has some new ways he's leading the company, which are pretty innovative. I walked the floor with him. He's good. He's a good kid, and he's creating 12 new jobs, and so we're excited about that. One of the things that he thought of, which is honestly just great, and it's a very TikTok, Facebook, Twitter kind of thing, is he started spray painting. He got we got a stencil and started spray painting Cox Concrete products on their products, which is great advertising, right? When it's going down the road, it's coming out of Titus County. So, Phoenix school buses, you guys, I should stop saying you guys. I apologize, Mrs. Bro. But you all are aware of this project as well. We made yet an approval for it last year, but they're moved into their new facility just north of town, and they're working on school buses. I don't know. I think it's still them too. When I talked to them a couple months ago, they had a listing out for one more employee.
What was the cost of building one of those? Do you know?
A schoolie, is what they call it. I think it depends on your trim and whatever you're putting into it. But so just so you understand, so school buses can be purchased. You can go into an auction and get it for like $2,000 to $5,000, and then if you drive it there, it's what you're putting into it from. So you're probably getting in their business plan, I think there was a year anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000. If you didn't know, the NTCC started its professional driving academy at CDL Academy in the fall of 2020. We partnered up with them, got our name on their new rig, and we awarded a $25,000 workforce grant to help get it ramped up and get these kids trained. They were encountering students who just didn't quite have the money and were waiting a while to get back. And they're like, well, I'll come back in a year. I'll go work somewhere. And that's just an attrition issue. And we wanted to make sure we addressed that. So y'all approved that as well to help us help them. So this is the best slide to kind of talk about this. So you understand some of the fruits of your labors. That $25,000 workforce grant went to, it's actually, I think, around 12 or 13 of them now. Scholarships, and 7 of those graduates are now employed at Pilgrims, JBS Carriers, Lowe's Distribution, Cox Logistics, and one self-owned. So, rig. So we are now, just for the public information, I know I said this at the last meeting, but NTCC not only has a driving academy, but they actually can test here, which was a big deal. They usually they're going through the classes and then had to go to Dallas or Texarkana or other surrounding sites. We are actually now, Titus County is a certified testing site for CDL licensing. The EDC did a $62,585 match last year, and that last year was the last year we were able to partner, and it was a big deal. I talked to Dr. Rose over at the college, and I said, I'd really like to get the high schools, if they're starting in their STEM programs, they're working in manufacturing or doing any component, we want to get them involved. So this is that last year was the first year we got Harts Bluff, Mount Pleasant ISD, and Chapel Hill all participating with the college, getting new nursing equipment, new manufacturing equipment, welding machines. And so all the ISDs now are doing some form of industrial training within the high school. And so we're partnering up with them. What's great is we did this as a 3-way. It's a great $1 to $2 match. The Texas Workforce Commission will match our dollar, whatever we put in. And so Paris, their EDC, and their college weren't quite able to get, it's usually a $50,000 match. And Sulphur Springs and I they went lower, and so Sulphur Springs and I split the difference, and we were able to get to $62,000. So we're excited about that. We think it's a great investment for the community. So we're doing that again this year as well, $62,000 as well. Revolving loan fund, just so you know, it was approved earlier this year. It says that about $234,000, and all that means. Yes, sir.
I just have a question. The spec building that was purchased by Diamond C, what year was that building built?
I think it was started in 2014 and was finished in 2015. I'm going to skip there. This is just a picture of Size Up, some of the data you can get on that website. And so, this is the last slide, but some of the things that we're continuing to work on. So we're still marketing to rural, small and medium-sized firms, but we definitely go after those large projects as well. Our targets remain manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food production is included in that. Distribution and aerospace. City is performing well with sales tax revenues. Other trends are the RLF deployment. As we get a platform to be able to launch that effectively, we want to make sure we have a good rollout of that. And just so you know, too, the Small Business Development Center, that's Tim on the left, and then on the bottom there you see Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Richard Bonney, are all on the loan review committee. And we have a built-in review committee. We look at projects all the time. And so we kind of have a built-in one with our current sitting board. So that's kind of who the revolving loan fund committee will be. And as we said earlier, we're really starting to get into the space of looking at grants. This is a generational opportunity. If you haven't been watching the news, what the current administration is doing and the former administration was doing as far as federal funding available to our communities to help build resiliency. And so we've positioned ourselves. We've working with a national grant group to do an assessment for us, which will bring the city on and say, hey, it doesn't it's not an EDC thing, but it's something a city can get involved in. We'll throw it to you guys and say, you guys want to be involved? So we're doing that assessment now, and we think we'll get that report in about a month or so. But we're going to go hard after and do what we can do to match and maximize funds to benefit our community. As I mentioned before, unprecedented activity we're experiencing there, and we're continuing to build our partnerships. But I think one of the biggest things that we do, and is my job to do, is continue to reevaluate our position and what's happening within the community, take action. So I stand for questions if there's anything, but that is the end of the update.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no further questions. We want to thank you for that update, Nathan. We appreciate you. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and close that item on the agenda, and we'll move on to item 7, which is discussion with Lanny Buck, KSA, concerning steps to take to establish railroad quiet zones. Welcome back, Lanny.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, Mayor and Council. Once again, it's good to see you. I believe about a month ago or so, we had brought this railroad quiet zone out and gave it a presentation on that. The quiet zone, as you remember from that, was being considered, I guess, to go through the downtown area and actually all the way out, pretty much outside of town, to where trains, in lieu of blowing their horns all the way through, would be more of a bell and more of a quiet type apparatus, as well as signage and lights and things that would have to be established for those crossings. And the question, you may want to guide me as we go, but the question came up after the conversation is what would be the cost of such an event. And so what I wanted to discuss with you tonight is it's essentially the same presentation. We had worked up a proposal to do a study for all the quiet zones to figure out exactly what it would cost at each intersection, because you can imagine each intersection is going to be different with respect to its approach, because you'll have to have an island between so people can't cut through the arms as they come down. You'll have to have lots of signage and lighting and improvements as well. And so the study would actually come up with a cost at each intersection for the project. And then that study, like I said, was about $10,000 to do the whole area. Once you would get the study completed, the next step typically is to determine if you want to move forward, because part of that study would actually be a cost estimate. And so the question usually becomes at that point, what's a typical cost estimate for something like that? And the answer is, of course, it's always dependent. I can tell you that we just completed bids on one in Longview, and it was around $300,000 for the improvements that were associated with that. Our estimates 8 months ago were $150,000, so you can tell that, as everything else, prices have really escalated. However, the way that the communities are typically funding this is they're asking for grants. Once you get this study done, you would ask the state, which is the Texas Department of Transportation, which would administer the grants, to basically accept your proposal to do the crossing. Those grants are typically 90% funded from the federal government, 10% funded from the state of Texas. What they don't pay for would be the engineering and the study part of it, but they typically would pay for construction, as well as a lot of things TxDOT does. They would like to take over the construction management of it. So what they would anticipate is the local entity get the engineering done, turn that over to the state of Texas. The state of Texas would put it out to bid, and they would administer that through construction after you get approved, of course, by the Federal Railroad Association and things of that nature. Those grants that I can't tell you exactly what they would, what percentage of the construction it would be. But like I said, the ones in Longview were 100% funded for construction only.
How many were there?
So previously we had done 4, I think, and then there was an additional one. The one I'm talking about was one additional that has just been bid out. So yes, sir, I believe there were 5. And I'm sorry,
How many are we looking at?
I think we were looking at 5 as well.
And to follow up for clarity, that $300,000 figure, was that for one?
That's correct. That is for one.
So I've got a question. So the ones that y'all have done for Longview, can you tell me what liability the city of Longview accepts if someone navigates around this quiet zone and gets into the track with the train?
So the idea is to make that to a bare minimum. So what you do is you have a barrier, a median, if you will, and usually it's got plants in it or something like that that goes all the way up to where the rail would cross. So if a person or to where the arms would come down. So if a person actually crosses, they're quite likely going to have to cross a curb or something like that to get through there. And the answer is it's going to be kind of like it is right now in a lot of respects.
Let me follow up with that. I guess what I'm wondering is, does the city's liability increase by us trying to make a quiet zone versus when the railroad's totally responsible? Because as we know, that a lot of times the railroad is kind of immune from and do what they want, it seems like, anyway.
So the answer is during the design process, the railroad has to buy off on everything that you're doing. So they're basically taking it and saying that this is equivalent to what we would do if we're blowing the horn. And the railroad still has the right, if they're coming along and they see something that's out of whack, they're going to lay on the horn. So there's always a bypass for them.
Personally, I think, from my standpoint, it's something for us to look at here. And again, we've got budgets coming up that are going to be trying to review what dollars we've got and where we want to spend them and how we can spend them. And I think this is another one of the projects that is it needed. The answer is probably yes. What part can we afford right now on it? And I would be the next question. I think it'd definitely be something that we could look at and for future.
And most cities that do this just start with the study. It is an expense, but it is a cost that you can see, and then you try to weigh out and work with the railroad at that point to see what really is going to be provided.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then we want to thank you, Lanny, for the information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It gives us a lot to look over and think about anyway.
Okay, at this time, we're going to go ahead and close that item on the agenda. Our next item on the agenda is the public comment. At this time, if we have anyone that would like to come up, I ask that you state your name and address, and you are limited to 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is David Ruff. I reside in Cookville, 4145, County Road 3070. I come to you today, I actually started watching this council about 2 years ago, right about the time that we were going into COVID. In fact, I had even made a comment that one day your voters will remember the spending when we had to tighten our belt loops. And over the time, I've been watching some of the spending going on, like gift from Pilgrim, and then this city council approving. Bellevue was about $1.35 million is what it approved for a civic center, in which we already have, and I kind of wonder what that 1.45 from Pilgrim would do to our existing center. If you've been watching the Titus County chats and stuff like that, you notice that your voters are taking tax burdens. Proposed values just started coming in. Some are $20,000. I've seen people increase value to $142,000, things like that.
I'm sorry, let me ask you, do you think we set the rates? You're aware that we don't set those rates as far as what the value is of the homes?
I am aware that you guys do not set the rates. My point being is that people are having to tighten up even more and more. And with some of the things that we're spending in the city, trying to do a beautiful vision of 2040, 2050. My gosh, I'll be 81 years old in 2050.
But you do have kids or grandkids coming up along the way, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I do have a beautiful 1920. Gosh, I think he's 20 now. Boy. At any rate, my point being is this right here. With all the spending that we're going on in the city, I ask you guys to really kind of take a look at what's going on. I've heard a lot of people speak tonight about money, just the railroad alone, $300,000 for a crossing. My gosh, 5 of them. What would that $1.35 million that was approved to go ahead and do a civic center that we already have and were gifted $1.45 million? What would that have done? So I'm going to leave you guys with this before we run out of time. We the voters of city councilors and all the way up to the highest federal office cast our votes for the people that we choose to represent the U.S. and for the government. For too long, it seems like those that we have elected in office are not there to serve our interests, but are there to serve the government's. It is so bad at the point that we, the people, feel like we need representatives just for dealing with the ones that actually seem to be elected to serve us. I want you guys to think about that. My name is David Ruff. I actually just started up Titus County News, and I'm a Cookeville resident, and I'm going to be reporting. As a matter of fact, I would love to get some of you guys on the records for some of the decisions that you guys have made in the past few years, and perhaps those emails will be coming to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How long have you been in Mount Pleasant?
Let's see. To answer 2 questions, I've been a Texas resident now for about 22 years, and I have been I actually live in Cookeville, so in this area I've been here for 12 years.
As we kind of talk about, so you mentioned the Pilgrim Center, and so I've done a little research today, and I will say this. Pilgrims, when we started 2 years ago, came up with a project, and they donated money across the board to towns that they do business in. And when you've been here for a while, you understand that Pilgrims has been over there for a very long time. And the people that built Pilgrims, that made Pilgrims what they are, reside in the community that center was built in. And one of the requirements for the money that they donated was for it to be built in their community. So when we started it 2 years ago, we got to about a year ago when we finally approved what we had going on. COVID was going on, and we actually had a government grant that was $400,000 that was going to be added to the $1.4 million that Pilgrims gave us, and they that would have finished the project. We had so we voted to approve it, and that money, that grant money, could have been used in that way. So some legalities took place. It took some time to clear some of that up, and we ended up probably 4 months into that. We had, at that time, we couldn't complete the contract. So by the time we got to where we could complete the contract, we had lost our spot for the building, and so the building had to be reordered. So as everything continues to go up over time, everybody that's here knows, anybody that's built anything knows what's happened over that last year. So sometime this year, I believe, I had Candace email me the agenda, and I can't remember the date on it, but so when it finally came, the building was ready. We'd already approved it. We'd already bought it, and they wanted their money, and it was going to be delivered in the next 5 days, and they wanted a check sitting there waiting for them. So at that point, we sat here that night, and because we couldn't wait on the building, because we had to wait on the building, we couldn't make the contractors wait what it cost them to build their project. So that cost kept going up as well. So when we finally got to approval, when we had to cut the check for the building that we had already bought, now you can let the building sit over there and ride if you want to, but we had already approved it, and I had given my word. Each one of us unanimously had given our word that we were going to build the project. Now, whether it's $400,000 at the time that we approved it, or whether it's $1.3 million at the time it got finished, we as councilmen, we as people that represent the people, had given our word of Mount Pleasant, that we were going to complete the project. Okay? So we have to build the project. You can't stop it. It's already there. So we continued and we said, yes, cut the check. At that time, we decided to reroute the money, and we decided to go for a bond for the money. And we borrowed the money at about 1.6, I believe is the number. And the only way we were able to get that amount of money was because we had such a good financial rating. And so we borrowed that money in addition to some other park monies to be spent in Delwood to complete some other projects that were on the list. And so really and truly, we were completing what we had already decided to do a year ago. And because of some of the legalities and some of the things that went on, we had to spend more money to do that. Now, that money was all in materials, and none of it, I called the architect today, and the only thing that the builder has increased his number on is what he pays his supervisor to do his job, because they went up on what they pay their supervisors to do. And that's in 2022. So that within itself. Now, the subcontractors have went up because all their material costs have gone up. So you've mentioned $27,000 for door hardware. That is an absolute fact. I contacted the architect today. The reason for that, we're not going to Lowe's and buying doorknobs. Okay, this is commercial grade equipment. Every one of them has a push bar on the inside so people can egress and get out, and it's required by law. And you can get in and out because of fire, or you can punch in your code to get in and out, so you don't have to, not 20 million people have keys, and if somebody doesn't need to have a key, you can key that in on that computer right there, and that person no longer has access. And then you mentioned kitchen equipment. So, yes, 75,000. So I know a little bit about kitchen equipment, and it is expensive, okay? But that also includes every cabinet, every table, every push cart, every ice machine, sink. Everything's done in stainless steel because it lasts longer. It's not able to be destroyed. And you have to remember that these figures are just numbers that are in a deal. If it doesn't get spent, it comes back to us. These are just, they're not quotas, but they're set up so if we don't spend that money, it comes back to us. So we're not willy-nilly spending money. And I would actually, just like for you to think about those things, and before you start doing things like that, come talk to one of us. None of us are going to come and get on your YouTube channel, but if you'd like to come and sit down and talk to us, any of us will talk to you.
I heard you talk about the prices and that we gave our word to go ahead and do this. My point being is that we were given $1.45 million by a Pilgrim as a grant, correct? And that employs people. Why didn't we take that $1.45 million? Does the community center not have a kitchen? Does it not have a stage or rooms?
Did you hear me explain to you?
I think you missed
just a second ago that it was a requirement from Pilgrims that be built in the community that built Pilgrims. That community built Pilgrims. That's who is employed there. That is who built the whole Pilgrims plant. That was the Pilgrims plant.
I have been here all of my life, and I live in the community. And I was there, and I know people that were born back in the 1800s up to this date who built Pilgrims. Part of that is preserving the history of the people who worked over there and gave their lives. They paid taxes through the generations. I can tell you people born in the 1880s, 1890s, 1910s, all the way well over 100 years ago. It's a preservation of the history for the people who made Pilgrims and their contribution. And you would have to have lived in the community to have seen people work there to know the effect. You can't read it in a book. You have to live this. My entire life is here in Mount Pleasant. I lived there. I watched people walk to work without cars over there when I was in the 60s and 70s with aprons and boots. It's just a contribution to give back, but not only to those who were living, to their forefathers who dedicated their lives over there. Mr. Pilgrim in his life dedicated to churches and communities over there who could not afford to give back. It's because people are less fortunate. So when you do your research, be sure you don't just have just today's history, because Mount Pleasant was established in 1846. We didn't just start because you came to town 12 years ago. We've always been here. And as far as taxes are concerned, yes, we're just giving back, and we're great that they made the contribution. But the people over there made it. I can remember it in my lifetime when people made $1.67 to when I was a kid, and they were raised. Both of my parents worked over there, and the entire community. Folks didn't have cars. When you don't know the history of how we got to where we are to this point, any person can see today because how Mount Pleasant looks. But if you had been there where there were dirt roads and there were trucks and everything else that stood over there, they're just giving back to the people who put in there. My mother and dad raised 15 of us. There were 15 of us in a family. I have 9 brothers and sisters. My sister had 4 kids, and my dad lived and died at 66 to take care of all of us kids. And he lived and died, sacrificed. I watched him every morning get up, we didn't have but one car, wrapping his feet in paper and plastic to provide for my family. And I saw him catch out with other men that didn't have a car, and they walked over there to pick them to make. They're just giving back to the folks who dedicated their lives. You were not over there because you didn't live there. I lived there, and I still live over there now. And I'm college educated, and I've trained people, but I give back to my community. They're just giving back to those of us. So when you write something, you be sure you go and do your research about the people in the town before you just talk about money. Because if money is the only factor, it's about people and dedication and character and integrity of people, and not a few numbers that you got from somebody about a building.
Sir, I'm 53 years old. My great-great-grandmother was born in 1898, so I have history.
She didn't work at Pilgrim because she wasn't over here. Mine were over there working.
Let me just ask one question. Have you ever been to Oaklawn Park? And have you ever set foot over there? And number 2, could you name me one street or possibly 2 streets that's over there in that community?
No, but like next start.
Thank you.
You bet. I'll guarantee the next article that I do, I will have walked through there, and I will know the names there. My gripe is not with Pilgrim, sir, and I can see that you're upset. My gripe is with this city council is spending money and has been for the past 2 years. People's prices are going up. Everything else is going up.
You're telling us how to spend money again. You've never set foot in this park. You don't even know where it's located at. You can't name me one street over there. How do you think we're supposed to feel sitting up here listening to you?
I'll guarantee you the next time I'm here next month, I will be.
I'll say this. Perhaps, maybe you could, if you really want to get a story, I tell you, go over to that community. Talk to some of those people, some of their parents or grandparents. Talk to them about the people that worked over there. I, too, grew up there. There's several acreage of land that Pilgrims has gained, doubled over the years, driving many of those people in that community that no longer have property there, had no way of preserving it. They're, like he said, like the council said, they were giving back. And I understand you say your gripe is not with Pilgrims, it's with the council. The community, and I don't know who all you've listened to when you say the community is speaking about the money being spent. Well, we as a council have to hear from the people also. And that's what we're here to do, is to serve the people with full understanding that their interest is our interest. So when people come and they speak to us about what they want in the community, we listen to all communities, not just a particular one. We listen to all communities. And when it comes to that community over there, we gave our word, Pilgrim gave their word, and we made it happen. We're going to make it happen. Because, again, we listen to the community and what they want. And perhaps, like I said, the people that you speak with, maybe they haven't been to that community either. So
I'd like to say this as well. The city has a $32 million budget. Why is this the only particular project out of all the topics you brought in to discuss tonight? There are many subjects. We have many items. Why is this the only topic that you picked out as a topic to discuss?
Because I particularly didn't want to be up here for an hour, but like I said, I guarantee when I come back next month, I'll have walked through that area, I'll have talked to those people, and I can bring more things.
I will remind everybody of this. Each person that's sitting here and each person listening online tonight, the last 3 years, we have reduced your effective tax rate. 3 years running, we have reduced, not held still, reduced your effective tax rate. Now, I can go over what your taxes have done if you'd like me to. Your taxes in 2018 started at $108,750 value. You paid $1,324.58. 2019, it jumped to $235,234, and you paid $3152.14. And then 2020, wait just a second, wait just a second. You were 108,750, and you jumped to 235, 234. I don't know if that was a sale or what that was. It was, you paid 3152.14, and in 2020 it dropped to 167,091. You paid 2,243.86, and in 2021 it went back up to 171,803, and your price still dropped to 2163. Now, the fact is, I don't set his tax rate. I set City of Mount Pleasant tax rate. That's Cookeville. I don't set it. So that's county. So I'm not sure why he's so mad, but on a county level, it went down. So I'm through talking about it. I'm telling you, the people ask for the money to be spent in the community that built them. We have spent money all through the years in every park in town, but we hadn't spent in Oaklawn Park. Now, you can figure out why if you want to. But we were going to give back to the community that built Pilgrims. And if that's a problem, I live here in Mount Pleasant, and I'm sorry it's a problem for you, but I don't have a problem spending that money in the community that has not gotten favor in this town in a while. Now, I'm sorry.
Do you know what our effective tax rate is?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what our effective tax rate is?
Not off the top of my head. I don't have that notes for tonight.
Thank you.
All right, sir. We thank you. We'll see you when you return.
I would like just a second to go ahead and respond.
Go ahead. You got 1 minute.
Again, I don't have a problem with the Pilgrim's Gift and building back. You seem to really get fired up in that, saying that maybe you're mistaken. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is $1.45 million a given. And if we can't build something for $1.45 million and have to approve another $1.35, you say that my county taxes, you don't control them? No, you don't. But those expenditures do come through in hospital, education, and other things that do affect me in Cookeville. Thank you.
Ma'am. That's okay. No problem. Go ahead and state your name and address, please. Yes, hold it. You'll have to hold.
I'm Regina Palmer, and yes, my husband is Blake Palmer of the Palmers that used to run the Tribune, but I'm not from here, although I have been here almost 9 years. I'm from Arlington. I'm very happy about my tax rate compared to Arlington. I'm here, and I know this is going to sound really, really stupid, but I'm here about a cat. The laws that y'all have here kind of perplex me, so I don't even really know if I'm in the right place. But I've already called the city pound, and I've already called animal control, and I figured this was the next stop on my line. I'm just going to do an exercise real quick that I learned in theater and speech, and I can project. in order for a cat to be microchipped, it doesn't happen like it does in Arlington. See, the day I got my cat from the pound, because I adopt, not shop, whatever, my cat came with a microchip and already spayed. They do that at the pound. They don't do that here. I asked the lady if there was a trap, spay and neuter, and release program here. She said no. Now, I don't know if this is something that city council does. I don't know if I need to speak with the animal council people direct or control people directly. My only question is if there's any way in the budget that we could, maybe, start up a program. There are 4 vets that I know of here. Skidmore, the lady that works with Skidmore, Dr. Breckner, who I had his mother back in high school, and she was great. I loved her. She was awesome. I was sad to hear that she left. And then, I don't know if it's the same Dr. Robertson, but Dr. Robertson's now Titus County, whatever. One of them, I'm sure, would love to do this. It's a great program. And it would be good for the cats in the area. No. The stray dogs, yes, they do have a problem, but cats are beneficial to an area. They get rid of vermin, they get rid of mice, they get rid of rodents, I've seen cats kill snakes. So I'm asking, please, there was a cat this morning. I've been 3 months trying to talk this cat into liking me. And I finally got it to come up to me, and I was feeding it, and it had a giant gash on the side of its head. And I was trying to get it to come up to me so I could clean it, and it wouldn't let me. It's feral. But my husband went, hey, the city streets truck went by. I think I live right next door to your sister, Miss Shonda. Yeah, I live right next door to Miss Shonda. But anyways, the street trucks came by, and then the animal control truck went by, and my husband was like, hey, the animal control truck went by, and I was like, I call him Garfield. He's a giant, fat, orange tabby cat, and he has, can I say? I probably can't say that. He has knockers the size of Texas, which is part of the reason why I'm trying to catch him so that I can get him fixed. But I couldn't find him after the animal control guy went by, and it's just kind of a worry of mine. Like I said, this is nowhere near important. I know that it's not important, but it's important to me. I've been trying for 3 months to catch this cat. I don't want him to get picked up or put in a rescue. I want him to be able to do what he needs to do outside. I'm sorry. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you so much for coming. But could you get with the chief of police and with the animal control and discuss that with them, and then they bring it back to us? That would be a good. But I'm so grateful for you to come. Thank you so much. But speaking to the chief of police, that's fine. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone at this time? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public comment at this time. Next item on the agenda is city manager's report. Cheryl, did you have anything?
You have the department reports in your packet. If there's any question there, there's a department director here that can answer them. And then just to remind you of Pine Fest coming up next week on April 28th. And I think you've got your materials there. Okay.
I'd just like to ask Anthony tonight. We had some people asking him about Flory Street. So I asked Anthony where we were at on that. We're completed with the project that fixed the plumbing, fixed the sewer. I know we've had a lot of rain. I know they have had a lot of washouts over. I know Flory is a bad, but I've got Councilwoman Spruill over there that lives on Flory, and y'all take it kind of easy on her if you would. She can only do so much. Anthony says that we're waiting on asphalt, and they are having trouble getting asphalt, so we are waiting on asphalt. We do know it's bad, and we are trying to get it fixed now.
If I can give you just a little bit of an update. So the contractor is definitely having trouble getting asphalt, has to do with plants. Anyway, he's got a plan next week to either get the asphalt in Texarkana, Paris, or Longview. And so he has guaranteed us that he will be over there to get the asphalt back in the road next week. So that's as close of an update as I can give you right now. If there's other washes or anything like that, we'll continually monitor that and work on it as we go.
Thank you, Councilman Adams. Listen, it's frustrating for all of us. I am on the council, and I do live on Flory Street, and matter of fact, a lot of the washout that we're talking about is in front of my house. So it's not just down the street. This time it's actually in my front yard. And it has been a little long, and it got me thinking, and I understand the frustration. I mean, I really do. I wish that I had some asphalt equipment in my backyard, and I'd just go out and do it as a community service. Unfortunately, I'm not quite that well equipped. But I will say this. Our city did respond. When I finally called today and realized that people were beginning to wonder, as our projects, we do have a 5 and 10 year plan in place to upgrade our water and sewer needs in the city, which again have been neglected for many years. Kick it down the road, kick it down the road. This council is really is fairly new, basically 3 years and less, except for Mr. Dale, including our mayor. And we discovered many projects that had been deferred. So it has hit us really hard to try to get our infrastructure back in adequate shape and looking forward. And we appreciate everybody that's contributed. I appreciate the citizens of the town that put the confidence in us to put us on this council. This council is very argumentative. That's a good thing. It's long for the people that have to hear us and endure it, but we do get a lot accomplished. I think we're argumentative in a constructive way, not a destructive way. We have a lot of mutual respect. We have so many guys and myself that really pour every decision. We go into it. My husband says, you spend too much time on this, Sherry. You spend too much time mulling this over and thinking. But when I called City Hall today, Candace took my call. And just to throw a quick idea out there, because until it's necessity that breeds invention. And I think it would be helpful to the citizens as our projects progress. KSA, overseeing our, what I'm talking about, all these street and updates. If we could get our media team to maybe put a monthly report up on the website of the Facebook and say, this month we anticipate starting this street. Without any delays, we anticipate to be 3 weeks, 6 weeks. At least the citizens have a little idea of expectation, and so they realize that they're going to be inconvenienced or have to make some detours for a few weeks. And then if we have a delay, it would be since we do have this media to use it to inform the public, it would help their frustrations. It would help our calls from frustrated. People don't call us till they're frustrated. I've had a couple of atta-girls, but I've had a lot more, when are you going to do something about it? And I certainly appreciate all of those calls. Okay, I don't run from any of them, but I don't always have a ready answer. But I do believe, again, we do live in the information age. I believe the more information we make available to our public and keep them updates, they're more content and they understand we've got an asphalt delay now. Because we live after COVID, supply chain issues are horrible. Price increases are horrible. We're still struggling to get enough subcontractors and workers. It's a big old hot mess out there. And I think we all can do better. But I do appreciate the staff. I do appreciate the council. And I appreciate the public that striving with us and giving us an opportunity. But I'm also willing to try to do better to get more information to them and to pay attention to all these details. Because it's been frustrating to me. I hit a hole the other day that Ed Thatcher got a call from me. And I said, I don't care if it is Easter weekend with your 3-day weekend. We got to have something done down here on Flory Street and Redbud, or I'm going to have to buy a whole new front end for my car, because I went coming off Redbud in the dark, and I wasn't expecting that washout, and there was no cone or anything right there to help. So I said, I'm sorry if someone, I don't mean to be unkind to anybody, but we can't make the weekend. And sure enough, we had a lot of rain on Sunday in Southgate. So anyhow, I wanted to say that, and our staff has stepped up. And I'm sorry to everyone for the inconvenience of the updates that we're needing to do, but they are needed. It's mandatory that we do them. There's a lot of inconvenience, and we're going to have more torn up streets, but I would like an effort to make it available to the public. What's next? The anticipated completion, and then if there's an update as to why there's delays. I think we could do that and help a lot of people's understanding of things.
Thank you, Councilwoman. This time, we'll go ahead and close the item on the agenda. We're getting ready to go to executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code. The City Council will recess into executive session to discuss the following: real property, discuss purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. At this time, the council will go into executive session. Time is now 9:54. Council has reconvened. There's no action taken in executive session at this time. The council will adjourn.